I'm Aubrey Sitterson, and this is SKALD. You're listening to the only story that matters, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing else like it. It's entirely DIY. I do everything myself, and the show is recorded in one single, flawless take. SKALD is serialized, but don't worry about going back to start at the beginning. Instead, just dive in here with the best episode of the show yet. Once you're hooked, go back and listen to the previous episodes if you like, or pick up the prose volumes on Amazon, or just keep listening to the new episodes. They come out every week. However you want to play it. This isn't me reading you a story. This is me telling you a story. This is SKALD, Part 90. Hungry flames, a cathartic blaze reached out from where she stood. The Lady of Ravenna. She who had taken that role, taken that name and that title, Caleria. She stood, leaning upon her gnarled staff, the one with that giant, smoky pearl atop of it, and she smashed her spear, that long, black, dire weapon, the one with the glowing red veins that seemed to light that entire room. She smashed the butt of it down upon those ancient, worn stones, made of a rock that had not been mined since before the worlds were sundered. She smashed it down, and the entire room erupted in a blazing conflagration, a fiery holocaust that devoured all it touched, one that roared in her ears so loudly that she could barely even hear her own voice as she shouted, as she screamed, as she screeched, "I banished you once, and I shall do it again." When the flames, those unnatural fires, the blaze that licked the air and consumed everything within its reach, when they abated, when they calmed, when, fed and sated, they receded back into the depths from which Caleria had summoned them, she was horrified by what remained, terrified of what stood there smoldering before her. That one-eyed savage with the burnt, leathery skin and the shifting blue runes just beneath it. The vicious brute that stalked toward her with a cold, callous, rictus grin spreading across his face. He favored you once, and perhaps he does still. But I am something else. I am his chosen. I am his beloved. Maul chuckled as he raised his cudgel. That awful, burnt, blackened, notched, and bloody weapon. That foul, inelegant club. And his flame will never again consume me. Caleria, shocked, stunned that any could stand against her cleansing flame, against that cathartic blaze, against the convulsing fire that had been the foundation of her rule, had been the only thing that kept Ravenna whole those many years. She backed away, her ancient mind racing for a solution, for an escape, for a way out. But how? Maul laughed again. But it was not a laugh of joy or merriment. It was a cruel, caustic laugh, one heavily laden with both sadism and masochism. It was the laugh of a man who had not just stared into the abyss, who had not just recognized it for what it was, but of one who had found that void within him, had embraced it, and now knew the awful, terrible truth that keeps wise men awake at nights. He spat his words out in disgust. You ask, but you do not wish to know. You do not wish to contemplate what I sacrificed, what I have suffered, what I have given for his favor, for his true favor. Caleria backed slowly away from Maul, positioning herself behind a simple table, behind what was left of it, behind its charred, crumbling remains. We are bonded. We are connected to one another, as we always have been. We are the same, Maul. We are nothing alike. Maul roared as he swung his cudgel, smashing what remained of the table, filling the air with ash, the dust of destruction that swirled about his head rather than simply settle to the ground. The ashes, like the flames, they recognized their king. Caleria, seeing her options evaporate before her eyes, seeing everything she had accomplished lost, seeing her city fall, seeing it taken by the riotous destruction pretended by the coming of that brute, that oaf, that savage, that destroyer, seeing it burned to cinders by the hate that flamed in Maul's one remaining eye, she began to do that which her younger self would have hated, would have reviled, would have detested. She did that which, as a ruler, she had learned was sometimes necessary. She debased herself for a greater good, and she pleaded with the intruder, the one that stood, his chest heaving, murder behind his one remaining eye, standing there over her. Please, Maul, we worked together once to escape the trolls, my dying world. She swallowed hard. We came here, to this realm, together. We worked together to get what we want. She thought better of her wording. What we deserve. We did it together, and we might still, yet again. Grinning viciously, savoring the moment, reveling in the fear that poured out of Caleria, out of the witch, out of his quarry, Maul put his hand out slowly, seizing the old woman by her ancient, withered neck, his thick fingers pushing through that wrinkled flesh and tightening. Slowly. You would have me work with you, or work for you. Caleria felt the brute's hand start to tremble upon her neck as she struggled for breath. You would use my strength, use my power to get you what you want, what you believe yourself to deserve, and then what? Tell me which. Tell me what you would do. Maul shook Caleria violently as she fought to fill her lungs. You would dispose of me? You would discard me? You would banish me? Speak, wretch, and speak plainly, for they will be the last words to ever leave your liar's lips. You would cast me, the one true king of men, the one true king of flames and ashes. You would cast me aside? Is that right? With a cough, Caleria managed to squeak out a response, managed to spit out an answer. No. This time, I'll kill you. But before Maul could close his grip, before he could clench that vice upon Caleria's throat, before he could send her hurtling, finally, into the inky black void of nothingness, the sucking darkness that she had evaded for far, far too long, had avoided in a foul affront to the natural order, an offense to what should and what must be. Before he could do anything, he was struck from the side. He was struck from the darkness. He was struck by something he recognized. He crashed to the ground with the weight of it, with its heavy, furry bulk, the thick, powerful blackness that came rocketing out of the shadows, slamming into his side, causing him to drop Caleria, to allow its master to go crumpling to the floor, sucking in breath, filling her spasming lungs. Maul fell down hard on his side, feeling its claws dig into his burnt, leathery skin, feeling the blood ooze out from his stained flesh as he looked up into those massive eyes, the yellow, intelligent orbs that he recognized, but not just recognized. They were the ones he knew better than he had ever known anyone. His shattered mind trembled, and he spoke the only word that he could summon up amidst the madness that closed in on his consciousness. Skog? But the beast didn't obey. The beast didn't listen, because the beast, that massive, furry cat beast, the one with the thick, jet-black fur, darker than shadow, deeper than night, it was not Skog. Yes! Get him, Umbra! Caleria screeched as she struggled to her feet. Kill him! And the cat beast, Umbra, she did her best to obey, the best to follow her master's commands, to follow the commands of the one who had rescued her from that massive world tree, the one she had been born from, grown from a seed that had been nourished within the body of one of her race, the last of her race, the monstrous cat beast that had accompanied Maul for his entire life. Skog. Umbra did her best. She bit and she tore. She directed those massive, curved, and barbed nails, the ones sheathed in onyx, sent them flying toward Maul's throat, toward his stomach, toward all his soft bits. But it was no use. The savage was too strong, too wily, too deceptively quick, even in his advanced age, even in his supine position, even with the loss of one eye. He was far, far more formidable than he even appeared. Maul didn't fight back. He did not aim to kill the cat beast. He did not even aim to harm it. He dropped his cudgel, that grim, dire weapon, let it crash to the floor, falling heavy, unnaturally heavy upon those ancient stones, polished by generations of footfalls. He looked up at those massive yellow eyes, so full of hate, and as he did, his own eye filled with something else. A debilitating mix of love, of loss, and of regret. Love for his lost pet, and regret for having lost her. Love for the only one who had stood by him. Loss of the one who had never betrayed him, and regret for allowing it, for allowing her body to be broken and devoured, ruined beyond salvation. His mind, already cracked, splintered, further. His mind spun, and his psyche cried out for succor that would not come. He was lost. He was abandoned. He was once again in that endless tundra, surrounded by ravenous trolls, crying, weeping, howling as his tears fell down upon the savaged, pitiful body of his pet, of his companion, of SKALD. No, no, please, SKALD! He gasped as he pushed Umbra's massive head away from him, as he kept her clamping teeth away from his throat. It's me! Don't you remember? Don't you know? It's Maul! But that jet-black cat beast, Umbra, she did not heed Maul. She did not heed her mother's master, her mother's blooded companion. She heeded no one but her master, the Lady of Ravenna, Caleria. Maul pleaded with Umbra. Please, SKALD, please. He allowed her claws to tear his skin, allowed the blood to coat his arms, obscuring the thick, shifting blue runes that covered his body. She killed you once. She killed you. Don't let her. Don't let her do it again. But Umbra did not listen. She did not slow her vicious, bloodthirsty attacks. Her master was in danger, and that was one thing she would not allow, could not allow. So she stayed on top of Maul. She kept slashing and biting until Maul did something unexpected, did something impossible. He sat up. Though pinned to the ground by that massive beast, though losing buckets of blood with every swipe of the cat beast's paws, though his mind was broken, shattered, though the pieces of it ground into his psyche, caused the sense to leak out of his eyes, he could not simply lie there, and die, even by SKALD's hands, by her paws, even by the paws of one who had died because he shook his head, running from the truth, but too scared to fall completely into madness, into the lunacy that lurked omnipresent at the corners of his consciousness, the sweet, majestic, noble beast that died because he was not there. No, he couldn't die. He couldn't allow that cat beast, couldn't allow SKALD, couldn't allow her to kill him, even though it was her right, even though she deserved it. He could not allow it. Not yet. Not while the witch, while Caleria, while she that supported, defended that coward, that monk, that terrible, unpredictable fool. He could not simply lay down and die while she still drew breath. And so he sat up. Slowly, gently, so as not to harm the beast, he sat up. He shoved the beast aside with a pained, tearful whisper. Shh, no, please, just wait. I know. And slowly, deliberately, with Umbra slashing his flesh over and over again, trying over and over to fell him, to knock him to the ground, a task made impossible now that Maul was aware, now that he knew what assailed him, knew to plant his feet into those smooth, polished stones, the ones that had now grown slick with his blood. As he was attacked, as he was assailed, he rose, speaking in what was meant to be a calming whisper. I know, and you shall have what you deserve. And as his gaze fell upon Caleria, cowering in the corner, as his demeanor sharpened and hardened, as a crazed rictus grin stretched across his face, he spoke in a voice dripping with venom. You shall have what you deserve, as we all shall, as we all must. Maul stooped briefly to retrieve his cudgel, to pick up that foul weapon, the one that seemed perfectly at home, resting in a puddle of his congealing blood, and he stalked forward. He stalked toward the witch Caleria. You will die, witch. You will die as I have always known you would. He laughed, cowering in fear. You will die by my steady hand. The massive cat beast, Umbra, sensing the acute danger her master was in, sensing the need to do something, she leapt up, she pounced upward, and she clawed at Maul's face. As the savage howled, Umbra dug her nails into Maul's forehead and slashed downward through his eyebrow, directly into his eye, a vicious, hateful, hate-filled blow that would have torn Maul's eye from his head, if it hadn't already been lost. Maul howled, but he didn't just howl. He didn't just cry out in excruciating pain, in horrific agony. No, he also flung his arm, his thick, powerful arm, a move not born of hate or anger, but of simple reflexes honed by a lifetime of struggle, of combat, and of self-defense. So though it pained him to look upon the results, though it made his shattered mind spin and crumble, he threw the cat beast aside. He threw her to the ground, a mass of crumpled, motionless black fur. He whispered something inaudible, and then he turned back to face Caleria. He approached slowly, taking his time, savoring the feel of vengeance, of revenge, of getting, no, of taking what was rightfully his, what was his by rights, and he loomed over Caleria, his one remaining eye going dark as he looked down upon her, looked down upon the witch as he dug his fingers into the burnt wood of his cudgel, the wood now slick with his own blood. But as he raised his cudgel high above his head, as he reached the pinnacle of that exquisite, righteous bloodlust, the spell was broken by a voice. Traitor, assassin, murderer. Voice was clear, cold, and trembling, not with fear, but with excitement. I have waited for decades, for generations, for this moment. You were lost to me, hidden, kept away in whatever hell she sent you to. Maul turned, knowing exactly what he would find, knowing exactly who he would find. The severe, statuesque, glowing beauty of the Queen of the Elves, his childhood love, the first to abandon him, to disappoint him, to forsake him. He looked upon Enlith. But that was too good for one such as you. It was too easy. I couldn't allow you to just disappear. She stepped into the room and unsheathed her blade. The stunning, gorgeous steel, the pride of the duelsmiths, which, once unleashed, once touched by air, even air as befouled as that which filled that darkened sanctum, steel that began to sing a song of triumphant slaughter. Now, I shall have what I deserve, what is mine by all rights earthly and divine. I shall have your lifeblood spilled spilt out upon my feet. Maul, grinning, turned to face her, turned to face this new challenge. We should have united the realms. We should have ruled together. We should have been together forever. He lowered his cudgel, his one eye watching Enlith's movements carefully. We still could. I'd still allow you to be my queen. He chuckled, and he licked his chapped, cracking lips. You've aged well, Enlith. She scowled, and she lowered her blade into a delicate, considered stance. And like all beasts, you have not. Maul, knowing just how arduous the battle would be, knowing just how outmatched he was, even prior to his lifetime in that roiling underneath, he stretched the muscles of his back and he shifted his weight to the balls of his feet, ready to spring into violent action. Is this it then? Enlith reached to her side, and she produced a long, curved knife, arming herself in the elven fashion, with one blade for each hand. Yes, beast. Finally. This is the end. And without another word, she charged forward, keeping her body crouched low, hugging the floor, aiming to chop Maul down like her dwarves had that defiant world tree so many years ago. But though Maul waited in readiness, though he was as prepared as he could be, though he meant to lash out with a single attack, to end things one way or another with a single blow, one vicious enough to crack Enlith's skull and one broad enough to leave his entire flank open, though he expected the scowling, cruel, beautiful elf to crash into him at any moment, the only thing she collided with was a gust of frigid air. The blast went just wide of him. It missed him, though he felt his entire side become covered in frost, become covered in that same crystalline, gleaming blue ice that grew unchecked around his screaming rival, around the furious queen of the elves, whose fiery hatred was still not hot enough to melt the thick sheets of ice that now encased her, caught in mid-charge in the center of that room. Maul whirled once again. He turned to find the witch, Caleria, standing behind him and to the side, still holding that gnarled staff, the one topped with that smoky pearl, the one that was now covered in a hoary frost that steamed steadily into the air. She looked to Maul with fear in her eyes, with respect in her voice. She fell to her knees and she dropped her weapons, the better to press her hands together and beg. Please, Maul, you have far greater enemies than me. Far greater. Please, give me your mercy. Give me your... But all Maul gave her was a single, monstrous blow, An artless downswing of his cudgel that landed upon her ancient brow with a thunderous crack, a noise that echoed throughout that ageless tower and mingled with another cracking, the cracking of the tower's foundation far below, the foundation that shuddered and collapsed in on itself, even as Caleria collapsed to the ground, lifeless, the blood pouring from her head, now mingling with Maul's own. But as Maul looked down upon his handiwork, as he looked upon what he had said he would do, what he had promised he would do, what he was bound to do, as he felt the tower tremble beneath his feet, as he felt the entire city of Ravenna shake and convulse in its death throes, as he felt that cathartic flame fill him with warmth and with desire, he also felt a heavy form strike him from the side. Once again, he landed hard on his back, but it didn't matter. He felt his head bounce against the stone floor, but it didn't matter. He looked up into those massive yellow eyes, the ones that burned with hatred and rage. He was set upon by her, by the cat beast, by Skog, by his dear, sweet, majestic Skog, the only one who had never abandoned him, the one whom he himself had abandoned. She tore into his flesh. She attacked him with a ferocity that he recognized, that he knew intimately, and as he laid there, he gazed up and out into the abyss that he had willingly embodied, and he spoke a single word. Skog. That jet-black cat beast attacked him. She tore him to ribbons, and he allowed it because he deserved it. Thanks for listening to this, the very best episode of SKALD yet. Unfortunately, I have some bad news for you. There haven't been any new SKALD reviews since the last time I recorded. This is horrible. It's embarrassing. Reviewing the show costs you nothing but a few moments of your time. And yet, the vast majority of people who listen to the show can't be bothered to leave one. Fortunately, we, together, can reverse this troubling trend. We can fix it. Just log into iTunes, search for SKALD, go to the reviews, and choose to leave one yourself. Give the show the 5-star rating it deserves. If you write a little something about it, I'll even read it here on the show. Reviews are the best way to help get the word out. But I also need your support on social media. Every Tuesday, when a new episode of SKALD hits your podcast feeds, please take to Twitter, to Facebook, to Tumblr, to Snapchat, to wherever you like to yammer out into the abyss. And please inform the sucking void of your undying love for the only story that matters. I'm Aubrey Sitterson on all platforms, and if you tag me, I will always shamelessly share your posts. The raw costs of doing SKALD, podcast and web hosting, are already covered by the show's Patreon, which is amazing, and I'm so grateful for it. But there are also other costs involved with doing the show. Opportunity costs, which come about because the time I spend on SKALD could be used on more lucrative projects, jobs, and gigs. The thing is, I don't want to stop doing the only story that matters, and I know that you don't want me to stop either. Help me afford to keep it going by going to patreon.com/skald and signing up with a few bucks a month. It's fast, simple, safe, and secure. And it's the best way to make sure SKALD keeps going forever. For more information on me the SKALD prose volumes, my comic book writing, signed copies of my work, my wrestling talk show Straight Shoot, my bio, contact information, social media, and more, head to aubreysitterson.com. Finally, my weekly recommendation. Given recent political developments, I've been listening to a lot of revolutionary music, and I've been quickly reminded of how much I adore the MC5. They were a proto-punk band from Detroit, and they wore their fiercely progressive politics on their sleeves as they performed a manic, frantic style of garage rock that paid homage to early rock and roll greats, while also setting the stage for what would become punk rock. My favorite album is Back in the USA. A lot of people look down their noses at it, but I think you're going to love it. Thanks for listening. I'll talk at you next week.